All right. Do that statement. We're going to move into, if the chair is ready, items for board action.
This is Matthew Holmes. I actually have a quick question. In public comment, a few people mentioned that there's no practical for electrologists, and I read through the rules and it does mention having to take a practical. Can you shed some light on what they're specifically speaking on, or is there a mass mistake, which I find doubtful?
Matthew, and members of the board, I will step aside and Sammy Patnote, our policy analyst, will step in.
Thank you very much.
Hold on, I'm cleaning up Bob's mess. Okay. To your question, Matthew, this is Sammy for the record. Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
I believe what they were talking about was the practical being administered through the health licensing office. That is true. We are not doing that anymore. During COVID, we had transferred that responsibility, but we approved the school, the one school, to give the practical. Then they closed, which kind of let us solve this rulemaking that we're doing now. So what the rules say now is that the practical will be given at the school or through a supervisor who has a trainee in their under their purview. And then what the rule also says is that we can approve other practical exams. Like we have recently approved the Monterey Bay Electrology School in California's practical exam because California no longer gives a state administered practical. So we're having to look at each school, what they're giving as a practical. So we're trying to open up all the avenues that we can and to increase number of electrologists. And part of that is not having to wait, similar to body piercing, of every quarter to take a test or wait for the school to get enough participants to pay for someone to take a test. So if it's just part of their program, and then there's actually a criteria that is in your documents that we can talk about more whenever you want. That breaks down the scoring criteria. If any of you have ever proctored for a practical, you kind of know what that looks like and what are you supposed to do, what the point range is. Timothy knows way more about this than I do. That the proctor will use to pass and fail somebody, and then they'll put that practical exam score on the transcript or the completion of training certificate. I think that's the name of it. And then they'll take the written test. They'll have to take a written test. Usually they take the NIC test, but if there are other tests out there, perhaps the oh my goodness, AEA's test, which is called the Chauncey, I believe. That one would likely be looked at and approved, as well as if there are some states that have their own administered written exams. So opening it up so that we can have a broader, a more inclusive number of exams that are approved without HLO administering them and hindering that timeline. So we're not having to wait every quarter to have those exams proctored. So does that answer your question? I think that's what they were talking about. They'd rather see it proctored by HLO than having it actually in the school or in the training program. And one other thing, tattooing doesn't have a practical at all. Everything is done at the school and they handle it. We get their transcript and somebody comes and takes the test here and they get a license. With cosmetology, all practical examinations are done at the school. They're sanctioned by the Board of Cosmetology and they take them there. So, and there's many, 33,000 people hold several cosmetology licenses. And I think probably good to note is that electrologists haven't had any complaints in 25 years. So safety wise, whatever they're doing is working. So there's all that. Is there anything else about the exam?
This is
Good.
Matthew Holmes. No, that covered my question. That cleared things up for me quite a bit. So there's the current theory that the reaction from the electrologist community about the change in the protocol for the practical exam could be a kind of a sense of growing pains, and they're not used to it. I guess
Yes.
another route that we could go just for like public outreach and comfort, is it possible for OHLA to send out a newsletter to all the electrologists and get like a community poll on whether the community at large would prefer to have practical exams in-house or in the office? Or is that a direction that the state is even willing to go? I mean, with tattooing not having a practical exam, and at the last board meeting, there was communication about getting rid of or reducing the piercing practical exam, which I personally don't agree with, but it was communicated, and having electrologists follow suit with what the other 2/3 of the board are either doing or looking at doing would make sense, which I know clouds the waters, muddies my opinion, and I'm not really getting anywhere, but just voicing where my head's at based on the public comment and with what the board's been doing over the last couple of years.
I will add this, in your packet at the very end. We are actually moving the, body piercing practical, where they, same as electrology, will be after March 1, where the practical can be done in a school, which we don't have any, or under a supervisor in a training program. We
Oh.
will continue to keep a practical going every quarter, just in case we have out-of-state people that come in. So it doesn't actually fix some of Desta's issues, but what our kind of plan is to get a group of piercers, not necessarily, they don't have to necessarily be supervisors of a trainee. Maybe it's Cameron Straub, who isn't a supervisor, but is he a piercer? No, some
Yeah, Cameron
piercer.
Straub's a piercer.
Okay, so Cameron, and he would qualify to give the practical. And so we do like maybe a mutual letter of agreement with him that he would, make sure that they meet all the qualifications on the scoring criteria and the assessment. So our hope is to get a pool of people that are willing to get the practical. And then that way anybody can make an appointment with whomever and get that done. That's our plan. We've never done that
Excellent.
before, so I will keep you posted on how that goes.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
So body piercing is moving in the direction of electrology.
And where tattooing has essentially always been.
Yeah, tattooing has always just been in the school. I'm not even sure they put a practical exam score on the transcript. It's just never. They originally started with like a written practical where it was almost like it was scenario based. So like if X happens and Y happens, what is
Oh,
P? But we kind of went away from that because it gets real murky as far as the answers and distractors and that kind of stuff. But that's how it originally started. But yeah, there you
Great.
go. There's the history of exams and for the sport. Okay, so you guys got all the materials on Friday, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So there is quite a few comments. I have either answers for the comments, opportunities where you can change things in the comments. I do have two things to say before I start, which is after public comment was received, we obviously got a lot of information about this insurance issue where supervisors may not be able to get malpractice insurance, those types of things for themselves and or the trainee. So will they even become a supervisor because they can't obtain that? So we didn't actually know that was an issue when we wrote the fiscal impact. Also, we didn't realize that health insurance will likely not pay for, say, somebody who's getting permanent hair removal and they're in the middle of that, to have allow the student to complete that procedure because the health insurance won't pay for that. So there is a substantial, could be a substantial impact to small business, since most electrologists are a small business and they would be the ones doing the training. So I will be filing an amended fiscal impact doesn't impact the timeline as far as the March 1 date. It's just putting everybody on notice that this could be an issue. With that, I'll be doing some research. So Sheila Ahern kindly gave me a bunch of names for insurance companies that do cover electrologists, as well as health insurance that cover patients who are receiving a hair removal for gender reassignment surgery. And I will also reach out to, I believe it's OHSU, Kaiser Permanente, as well as Lacey Keeney, who, as she just said, in public comment, takes most insurance companies that cover that, that procedure. So I will be filing that as well. I will also be extending the public comment for 7 days. Also will not affect, the rules going into place on March 1st. An error on my part is on the agenda. I put public comment before the vote. It was supposed to be after. So technically public comments open past. I didn't notice it for everybody on the rulemaking notice. That's a whole bunch of stuff you don't have to know about. No, I'm extending it 7 days. If we get any major things, HLO will review them, consider them. I don't anticipate any major comments outside of what we've already received. And then HLO will actually go ahead and approve them. Unless there's something crazy where we would pull the board back together between now and March 1st and have you vote again. Otherwise, we can move on. Do you have any questions about those two things?
It's Matthew Holmes. I don't.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so do you have a preference on how I go through this, Matthew?
Oh no, whatever's easiest for you.
Okay. Does anybody else have a preference, or do you want me just to kind of acknowledge? We could just go through and consider each of the public comments. A lot of them are similar or the same, so I have questions for those some areas. So the copy that you got on Friday is going to be slightly different than my working copy, because I'm always up against the timeline and I was making changes over the weekend. So, but I will go through all those with you. I don't think that it put any more barriers up for anybody. It just kind of clarified a few things, and actually a few of them actually potentially is public safety related. So I'm just going to go then. So we'll start with definitions, and the only public comment I got on definitions was from Sheila Ahern, and she wanted the direct supervision and indirect supervision tied to education. It's already tied to the training piece. She wanted it tied to the education piece. So in the school, that's easy to do. I just copy and paste it in. It just means that indirect supervision for a certain number of procedures, and then direct supervision for a certain number of procedures, and then indirect for all the rest. So it will just look exactly the same, and I'll put that in, not a problem. The next comment was comments everywhere. Doing all of Sheila's first. So she generally supports the training program. She has all the same concerns about the insurance, which we're now going to amend the notice and put all of that out there. We did the direct supervision. She did make a comment about the jewelry under the gloves, her favorite topic. And she made a good point, and I checked her point. So only the earlobe piercing and electrology does it actually say you can't wear jewelry under your gloves. Technically, a tattoo artist or piercer can wear jewelry under their gloves. It doesn't even say it. So honestly, I don't know why it's like that, to be honest with you. And I don't know if you guys are still like really set on no jewelry under gloves, but I can take it or leave it. Kind of up to you guys if you want to talk about that for a minute. We've had this conversation several times, so. I did find it interesting. It wasn't in the other professions, but I'll certainly add it in based on what you say today.
This is Matthew Holmes. I would love to add that to the other professions. It's kind of a bummer that it's not already in there, and I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice it either, and I wrote it. I will take some blame there. Okay, any other comments about that one? I know it's been a topic pretty much every time we open up rules for them. The next one was the 400 hours, and looking at it from So if 1 hour procedure, so if you consider a procedure, like 15 minutes is one procedure, 20 minutes is one procedure, and you make that each one of those little ones up to equal 400, that's not actually how the rule is written. It's written 400 hours of practical experience and 400 procedures. For example, and this is the only way I understand this, is if a student has done 400 procedures in 300 hours, they still have to get 100 hours. So that's how it works. So trying to do increments and all of that is not how the rule is written. If you do 500 procedures in 200 hours, yes, still got to get 200 hours. 200 hours. So it kind of works out on its own based on well, it's supposed to. So you're actually getting the number of procedures and all of those hours at one time, or in that whatever time frame that you're working from. Does that make sense?
This is Matthew Holmes. It makes sense to me. It's the same way that the tattooing hours work.
Yes. Anybody else? Audrey, you're an electrologist.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Perfect. Okay, the next one was safety and infection control. So I think there was a couple things happening. Know that when we do rulemaking, if I don't do a strike through or bold or add something new, you won't see that rule in the draft. So client records wasn't changed at all, so that's not in here. Sheila talked about referencing the Oregon Laws and Rules exam, and that all the safety and infection control rules aren't in here because we only changed, I believe it was 1 or 2 of them. Adding the glove piece, and then what's the other one? Neuromodulators, that one. So you don't see them. And then there was another piece where she wanted under the theory portion of the education and training. So it's under the theory part. It has the curriculum must include 200 hours of theory instruction required in, and then it lists them all. And then one is safety, safe uses of devices, and federal regulations and standards. And I believe that that would be where we add in Oregon laws and rules. I need to reference that with Serenity, but I'm pretty sure that's where it would fall. I didn't add it. So is this the right route? Yeah. So there's that. Any questions about that? That's just kind of clearing a few things up. It's not making any big changes. Okay, hearing none. Keep on moving. Talk about that. So the next one was retake examinations for written. So the written, we don't give a written test here except for the laws and rules test. But it's open book and it would be online. They can take it home. So we wouldn't have a retake policy for that. And we don't give any other written tests. So we wouldn't be able to control what the retake policy is, which is why that was removed from the rule. In most cases, people take the NIC written, which is a national written, and I don't even have a clue what their retake policy is. So that's why that was removed. And then continuing education. Any questions about the retake? Okay. CEUs, we removed the carry forward clause, which means you could carry forward up to, I believe it was 6 or 8 hours for your next continuing education. However, per the rules advisory committee and then the board when they approved it back in September, electrology went to all self-study. So there would be no reason that they need to carry forward anything if everything is done by self-study. So does that make sense?
Sammy, what page are you on? I'm trying to,
Oh,
I got lost.
I have notes that I'm following. but I
Okay,
am
gotcha.
on-
I'm like, wait, hold on. We just jumped somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm on, so Sheila gave 4 pieces of comment. And in one of them, hold on, let me find which one. So on her. Which one did she put it in?
Thank you for that,
So-
Audrey. I was furiously trying to find where we were.
It's on, give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna pull up the materials. I can tell you what page. It's on, it should be under the public comment cover sheet. It should be the second page of Sheila's first comments. And it's at the bottom, and she titles it 0055, why was the rollover stricken? I'm gonna bring it up. Serial agreement. Can you guys see the materials now? I'm gonna go down to where I'm at.
Yes, I can see them.
So it's right here.
Oh, got it.
So why was the rollover stricken? And I'm just basically answering the question. Now, if you don't agree with the answer I've given and you want to look at adding something to the rule, we can definitely do that as well. So, based on the board and the committees, wanting to move all of continuing education to, self-study, I don't know that there would be any reason that they would want to, carry any of those forward. Plus, it's administratively a bit of a nightmare to try to do. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
This is
This is
Matthew
Lisa
Holmes. It
Kimball.
makes sense to me.
Okay, now we're gonna move to, just gonna go right on down. So all of those things, I answered all of Sheila's, her 4 emails. Some of them were responses to the hearing, some of them were insurance information, but in that summary, I just pretty much summed them all up. So next one I'm gonna go to is the comment from Brenda Cox and Amy Harley. So some of this is things completely outside the board and health licensing office's control. And I'll kind of highlight those. Some of them, they just didn't see and they are actually there. So we'll just kind of go over each of the bullets if you are okay with that.
To me.
Okay, excellent. So the first one is fast tracking the process into the profession. Actually, the qualification committee met and didn't change the number of hours. So it likely won't take any more time than it did previously. And actually it could be faster because the board didn't set a limitation on how, say, they have to do it. They can't do it within under a year. So they could get it in 6 months. So there is a possibility that somebody would be quicker, but they didn't change the number of hours that is required. And then, and I think it's always important, and nobody ever likes this kind of statement, but when we license people at a state level, it's always based on minimum competency. It's not based on you being an expert in the field. We understand that you're not. And that the bar is set to a minimum competency so you can safely work on someone. And the board, HLO, and all the committees have decided that 600 hours, and pretty much nationally, is where people can safely work on consumers and with 600 hours of training. So just stop me if you want me to, if we want to talk about that more. Okay, moving on. So the next bullet is about, we understand there's immense need for professional electrologists. It's kind of back to the same one. That's an acquired skill and takes time and guidance. Again, it's minimum competency. We're not, we're not putting out people who are the best electrologists in the world, and they probably can't, they won't have an opportunity to do every type of, electrology on every place possible in the body. I don't know. So noting that, and I think too, Lacey Keeney's comment earlier that having a master course in electrology whenever can kind of says that there could be another level that the basic electrologist isn't going to get in the 600 hours. So that's just kind of tacking on to what she said. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'm just adding it in. They believe that the way the rules are written, the draft rules are written is a D value, kind of back to the first two bullets, still the 600 hours requiring 400 hours of practical experience and then 400 procedures. So it's not anything different than it was before. It's just allowing the training to take place in a body art facility under a supervisor who has 2 years of experience and holds a license. So, and that actual requirement is the exact same as the Higher Education Coordinating Commission's teacher registration requirement for all professions under their purview. So tattoo artists, 2 years of experience and a license. That's what the teachers in their schools have to be. Advanced aesthetics, 2 years of experience and hold a license. That's what theirs has to be. Denturists, same thing, everybody. So having a trainee in that same, holding them to a higher standard would be different than all the other professions that fall under the schools. So I think that's actually farther down, but I thought I would just attach it there. So that actually answers the next question, the 2 to 3 years of experience, wanting it to actually be 5 years. So I just gave you all the reasons why we wouldn't do that. Do you want to consider that? Because right after the September meeting, I got a boatload of comments saying everybody wanted this 5 years of experience. But it was before public comment was open, so I didn't accept it. But I think it's been now vetted through, Jamie mentioned it today, I have it here. So are you still comfortable with the 2 years holding a license and 2 years of experience? Everyone's still comfortable with that?
This is Matthew Holmes. I am pretty comfortable with that. We had a pretty in-depth conversation about it last time. And I guess realistically, what we'd be looking at in having the discussion about changing that 2 years to 5 years or whatever we'd agreed upon would also open the doorway for looking at the other professions. So in looking at electrolysis or electrology, do we as a board feel like it is a more complex field than tattooing or piercing, therefore dictating more training experience or more practical experience before you can train other people? Or are the other two professions undercutting? Should we increase those so that they all continue to match? Personally, again, I'm pretty comfortable with 2 years across the board, just because that's what it's been for all of the other professions, and it's pretty consistent across everything. But I'd love to hear what everybody else's opinion is.
Thanks for letting us know that, Matthew. This is Audrey Jones. I wasn't sure what it was in tattooing and whatnot, but if it seems pretty consistent with all the other professions, that's, a pretty good answer right there.
And it's what the electrology school, when it was open, what their teachers were required to have for, I've been here 26 years and they were open in all of that amount of time. I don't believe it's changed in that amount of time. And I guess there's something to be said for if we put in the 2 years license and 2 years of experience and we have a bunch of people, hurt and complaints, we can always go back to the drawing board and, do a temporary rule, changing it and all of that. So you're never stuck in in a rule forever. It's very easy to change. You can do it in a pretty short timeline. This is obviously in a more extended timeline, but it can be much shorter. So if we see an issue with supervisors training trainees, then we can always go back to the table and make some adjustments to that. And if it's in interest of public safety, a temporary rule could be filed. So never fear, we're not stuck in this 2 years of experience forever if something goes haywire. I'm going to keep on going then. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's been like the talk going back and forth about potentially muddying the waters by just letting a bunch of people in. But like in my opinion, after reading all this stuff, I keep thinking about the end user. And if there is such a great demand, that should kind of like supersede what we're worrying about, at least initially. But is there a way, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but to like force the issue of checking back in a certain amount of time to actually see what the impact of these rule changes are on the industry moving forward?
Give me an example. You mean like reviewing if there's complaints or like how many
Yeah, just
people get
something, if there's like a
the,
set deadline or something where it's like, okay, we see how many people have joined the industry. We see if we can know how many complaints have come in since then. If there's any change or modulation inside the industry that is taking away from the end user, then we're kind of like forced to deal with it right then versus waiting for something to come up and being reactionary. I don't know if that's,
yes.
sorry.
I'm writing this down. Okay, good point. Yes, I think that's something that we can somehow report at the next board meeting, at least a verbal kind of, I mean, that a lot of that stuff is obviously given to us statistically, but it's just kind of in different places. So I think we would be able to combine that like into one memo or something like that. And maybe even, I don't know if it would be possible to survey electrologists on how many people that they provided permanent hair removal to, who have been able to get their gender reassignment surgery. I don't know. Those are some things I could think through and see if how we could get, de-identified information, maybe through insurance companies. There's a lot of possibilities that are possible.
Just kind of,
so.
yeah, like it would kind of like, assuage like both sides of the argument, hopefully, question mark. But anyways, thank you.
No problem. I'm writing again.
I also want to apologize for my grammar. I'm coming off of a 60-hour, 3-day shift, so I'm a little bit wonky right now.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. I didn't even notice. Okay, we're gonna find what bullet I'm on. Oh, so, they want to know who approved the curriculum and, will there be a review, prior to the implementation? So the qualification committee met on June 27th. And I believe they met in 2021 as well, reviewed the curriculum. Then they made the recommendation to the Rules Advisory Committee, who met twice. And then in September, the board approved the rules with the, the smaller schematic. And then there's a larger body of work that you have in your packet and that you had in your packet in September. So at the end, the board will approve it. And then HLO will also bless it. So it's gone through several different meetings, public meetings, so that it can be reviewed, but essentially it's 600 hours, 200 hours of theory, 400 hours of practical experience, and 400 procedures. So that's kind of the history on how we've approved that. Who will administer the training program, they asked, so it would be any electrologist with 2 years of experience and a license. So, yeah, which we've talked about. The next piece, we have literally no control over on asking for, types of scholarships and things like that. That would be more of association job to ask for different types of scholarships for students. So that's really out of our purview. And Monterey Bay, they talk about Monterey Bay Electrology Institute already has a program, and I think they're alluding to us adopting whatever they have instead of having our own. But I don't know that it's that much different. And we've already approved Monterey Bay's practical exam, and we're pretty sure their education, we have to actually reference that, find out for sure, but it's within the works if we haven't officially done it. So yeah, there's really nothing that we can do about that. And I think I've been here for a long time, And the electrology number of licensees has literally been between 95 and 105. It's never fluctuated really outside of those numbers, never gone too much lower and never gone too much higher. So, you know, the board can't force people to enter the profession. All we can do is continue to remove barriers to get people into the profession. And I think that this is at least the first step. And if we can come up with other steps in the future, then I think we certainly will be doing that. But we all know what we know, and we can only do what we can do. So this first kind of venture is to open this training program up, see if it works, and make sure people are getting safe training and are leaving the training program with, you know, the knowledge to provide safe service to customers. So there's that on my soapbox for just 1 second. Oh, we talk about that members didn't get notification. Actually, when I reached out to all the communities likely to be affected to get RAC members, I did put that notice out to all electrologists, which I assume would be all people who are part of the Oregon Electrology Association. What about the fiscal impact? So in a fiscal impact, you're kind of guessing, right? So I'm not an electrologist. I ask questions from electrologists like, how much do you make? How many hours do you work? What are the costs? What a fiscal impact does is puts people on notice that this could be a cost. And if I have a cost, then I'll put it. But sometimes it's a theory, or I don't have a tangible number. So that's just how they work out. And I think I did that in the fiscal impact. We've already talked, well, we haven't talked about this. So whatever health insurance is willing to provide as far as a procedure for a consumer is what they provide. HLO can't force them to cover hair removal for other types of, you know, medical conditions. So that would be something that maybe the association would bring up. I know our midwives have had issues with getting home birth covered, all stages of home birth, and the association has worked with, you know, the Oregon Health Plan and different groups to kind of get that going. So it is possible, but it's definitely something the profession would be kind of spearheading, not HLO or the board. Electricity actually still is in the curriculum, but it's in the larger body of work. So it's not in the rules, short breakdown of what's there. It's in the larger curriculum and training program. Same with positioning and draping. All of those things are in it. It's just not listed in the short version of what's in the rule. And actually, when the rules are filed, there'll be a link to the larger body of work, so anybody can be able to review what the curriculum and the training program look like, what the exam criteria is. So it'll all be out there for people to review. We already talked about this, about other laser professionals. I actually just kind of went through this because healthcare interpreters are now required to get interpreters to interpret their medical things if they accept Oregon Health Plan, something like that. And advanced estheticians don't get, say, laser hair removal. Advanced estheticians don't get reimbursement for permanent hair removal for gender reassignment surgery. So electrology literally is the only one. And again, that would be up to another professional to get that covered under health insurance. And then the last, who's going to pay? The trainer was going to pay. For supervisor will pay for all of the materials. And I mean, there's nothing saying that a trainer can't charge to train somebody. So they could factor that cost in to the service. Yeah, so that's possible. And it's a choice, you know, it's a choice to become a supervisor. No one's saying you have to do it. We're giving you an option and a pathway to do that. So if you can't take on the cost and you don't have the time, then like Sheila said, she probably won't be doing that. So, because she doesn't have the time in her busy schedule. So that's always kind of at the end underneath everything, is that if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. And then the last thing is from Amy Harley specifically, and She just has concerns that the new education is not going to be the same as the education she's received in California. So that's all of hers. And then the rest, we did have one. Hold on, I have to organize my stuff. One, Lisa Garofalo wanted just to have the examination adopted, doesn't think that the training and supervision is adequate, and it's basically lowering the standard. We just went over Brenda Cox, Sheila was good, Dr. Dudgy, I don't know how to say his name, was in favor, Sasha Strong, Sheila, Jamie, and yeah, so that was kind of all the public comment. And then there was a hearings officer report, which I will give you a verbal tutorial on, which is pretty much all the same. Hold on. Trying to find it. Check the paper.
You're doing great, Sammy. You've got this.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, here it is. I knew I had it. So Sheila testified at the hearing and I went over everything she said. Brenda Cox testified at the hearing and talked about the insurance issue, which we've talked about. We got the indirect supervision, talked about that. Just want to make sure we've considered everything. The hour requirement, so Sheila put a lot of her concerns, well, she put them all in her written testimony, but she also verbally testified, so. Milo Venison actually did verbal comments and wanted the number of hours lowered, and his recommendation was to 200. I don't know if he meant like they could start working on the public at 200 hours, but still had to get the other 4. He wasn't really clear on what that meant, but that's what he wanted the board to consider. Oh yeah, and to take the license exam at 300. Oh, that's right. So he said, if they could take it at the 300 hours and they could pass, could give them a license. It's almost like a carve out, but I don't know that the board would want to do that. I know HLO would not want to lower that standard. And of note, there were several public members who weren't licensed on the Rules Advisory Committee that weighed in on this consumer part. And they agreed that the 600 hours is what they thought would be the safe number for consumers. Another one was from Daniel Fott. She had the insurance information. And then that was it. Yeah, that's it. Oh, Seth Johnstone was in favor. Yeah, so that's all the public comments. I did want to go over a few things that I changed over the weekend. Does anyone have any questions about the public comment or the hearings? My verbal information from the hearing. Hearing none. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and take you to another screen. So nobody panic. Probably me panicking anyway. This mouse keep disappearing. Can you see my screen?
This is Matthew Holmes.
You can see the highlighted yellow now?
Yep.
Okay. Nobody get dizzy on this because okay, so go through definitions. I'm going to take the direct and indirect supervision, add them to the school education piece. We got that. Nothing that came out of public comment. So I'm just going to keep going unless you have issues. I'll just kind of go over them one by one. Then we have the school approved curriculum, 600 hours, 200 hours of theory, 400 hours of practical experience, and 400 hours of practical procedures. Any questions about that? And then the training program is exactly the same. There's a few tweaks at the end, but I think actually adding indirect and indirect supervision makes them really close. But everybody understands the gist of this. I'm just gonna keep going. And this is what's struck through is all the old input, all the old rule. And then this is all the training program. And I didn't really make a bunch of changes since with you guys proposed them. Until I get down lower. So limited basis, so actually, and let me just note this, in I don't know, Desta's comments, I think she said that a temporary license is only good for 30 days, it's actually good for 90 days. In a 12-month period, so I wanted to just kind of note that. Wait, hold on. Okay, and here's the temporary trainee. Here's who they are, and here's how you get the license. Now, I didn't change anything in that since it was proposed. Here's the supervisor requirements. Again, I didn't change any, have not changed anything there. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Here's the electrology requirements. I will tell you that there'll be forms updated, and everything will kind of kick off on March 1st. So we'll have people working behind the scenes, Cali Zinc, Sarinthia, our IT guys. So there's lots of things happening behind the scenes to get kind of all of these things up and running. So on the 1st of March, we can hit the ground running. So hopefully it'll go off without a hitch. We'll see. So I did have made some changes in the application piece. So we've added the temporary pathway for temporary trainee pathway, and oh my gosh, get it together under pathway 2. I haven't changed that at all since we proposed them. I have changed the reciprocal one. So what it said before, it took out the requirement to pass a written and practical exam. So I've added it back in. Nobody panic. Here's why. Here was the problem is this reciprocity pathway is for people who have a license and meet the equivalency for Oregon and people who do not. So the issue was if they do not meet the equivalency in their education and training, are we just gonna let them take the safety and infection control test and not the practical and written? And we thought that was not a smart thing to do. So we've added it back in here, but if they are equivalent and they've passed a written and practical examination, great. They don't have to take ours again, as long as they've taken one that we've approved. So the NIC, the Monterey Bay practical, the laundry list of different exams that we've looked at. So we're not adding a barrier here for those who are equivalent. We're just putting a safety piece back in for those who are not. Does that make sense? Because basically we're going to look at documents like tax documents to see if you have enough experience to at least get you to the statutory requirement. And then really the way we're going to make sure that you're going to safely practice is just test you practically and written. So does that make sense? So that was added. It's actually how it's worded today in the rule, but I added it back in. So all that makes sense.
Sure does.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then the equivalency pathway. So this is brand new. It looks like I changed a lot, but it really didn't. I just did some clarification pieces. The biggest change that I made was I thought, this was my fault, that we were going to send somebody who comes into Oregon, never got a license, but has experience, education and training, but doesn't have a license because there are states that don't have licensing. We're going to send them to a training or a school to have all that reviewed. That's not the case. HLO will review it and let them know what they need and then send them to a school or a trainee, whomever they choose to get that additional training, take the practical, whatever written they're going to pass. So that was the piece I messed up on, and then Sarinthia corrected it. And so we've added that piece in here. It was there with the others, having it the trainee and the school. I just changed it to HLO, would require that. would do that review. So it looks like a lot of changes, but it's really not. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Next one is the approved exam. I also made some wording adjustments here. I changed may to must to may. So it doesn't necessarily have to be administered at HEC or the a training program, because it could be, say, the NIC practical. So it's just saying that it can be there, but it doesn't have to be. And that exam will be approved and ready for taking. No. Yes. Well, nobody's gonna be completing the apprenticeship or the training program on March 1st, because that's when they can start. So, but that's kind of our drop date. Oh, this number 5 is new. This is actually this goes hand in hand with what I talked about in body piercing. We're having additional licensees outside of a school, outside of a training program, be able to administer the practical. So at some point, that's what probably the body piercing rule will look like. We've clarified it here, and that test will actually, we anticipate having, well, we are going to have a list of those licensees, so we'll give that practical by April 15th. So it does add a little bit of a barrier, but not too much. If you find a trainer or if the school opens, that will give it to you, great. But if we fear that there'll be people that don't want to do that. They want to just do their trainees and that's it. And so we want to make sure that there's an opportunity to take the practical test other places. Does that make sense? So that is new. Okay, moving on. The office may review any administered exams. That's just a kind of a catch-all. That just says we can review them if you administer them, and it's kind of standard language. And that is all that I have changed in these proposed rules. Okay, pretty sure. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions about this? Hearing no questions. So let me just summarize. I'll make those few changes out in the indirect and direct. So I will put the public comment out for another 7 days. So you guys will get written notice of that. I will amend the notice of fiscal impact to add the insurance, the 2 different insurance pieces to that notice to let people know there could be an impact. And then the HLO will go ahead and consider whatever public comment we get in that 7 days. And then we will file permanent rules with Secretary of State for effective date of March 1. So if somebody wants to just say so moved, you can, and then a second.
This is Ryan Othis. So moved.
Lisa Chambliss, I second.
Okay, Matthew, take it away.
This is Matthew Holmes. A motion has been made. I'll call the roll. Matthew Holmes, aye. Lisa Chambliss,
Aye.
Audrey Jones,
Aye.
Ryan Othis.
Aye.
A motion has been passed.
Awesome, you guys, thank you so much for making that easy on me. A little nervous. I don't even know what's on the agenda next. Oh, it's Cerinthia, so she's going, I'm gonna stay here because I'm after that.
This is Cerinthia Murphy.
Oops, hold on. Give me a minute.
I'm the I don't know.
Oh, hold on.
Mine's off. Okay. This is Cerinthia Murphy, the qualification analyst for the Health Licensing Office. Here, I'm gonna move over.
Okay, one more time. This is Cynthia Murphy, the qualification analyst for the licensing office. The education and training that you have in your packet is exactly what you looked at in September and voted on. That the rule advisory committee had looked at and recommended, and also the qualification committee had presented to the RAC, and then it came to the full board. So with this proposed rule that Sammy was presenting to you, I wanted it to provide it to you again in case you had any questions in regards to any of the public comments or any of the testimony that was given at the hearing in regards to this training program. Did anyone have any questions in regards to that? No? Okay. I'll move forward then. I believe the next item that we have is the standard body piercing practical examination. And so this is a memo to the board, letting the board know that we will be eliminating barriers for standard body piercing licensees, and we will now be administering the practical examination, which is consistent with other programs at the conclusion of the training. In addition, we will also be offering that practical examination through the state quarterly like we currently do for individuals coming from out of state. And then we will also, moving forward, look at, like Sammy had specified in that last rule, that working with individuals to offer that examination outside of the training program via the contractor MOU, and then no longer administering that state prepared practical examination through HLO. So we will be doing this as of April 1st of 2023, and HLO will provide notice to all interested parties and provide the documentation and information that they need in order to start administering that practical at the supervisory level. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that memo? Right, so now, Matt, you want to take it away? Sammy, maybe nobody can hear me.
Can everybody hear
Is anybody
Cynthia?
there?
It's Cynthia, we can hear you. No worries.
Nobody's responding or.
We're just so
All right,
enthralled
thanks,
by all the
Matt.
information you're giving us. It's great.
Okay, the last item I have is the 2023 legislative summary. We've got, let's forget this number, 7 bills that we are tracking either as a 1 through 5. We have several 2s and 3s that require analysis and all that. The only one that really affects this board is it would allow for tattoo artists to provide local anesthetic to pay to their clients getting a tattoo, or require a education program be put together, possibly an exam. So it's like a mini field of practice and a field of practice. So it's not something you would have to do, but it's something that you could do. It doesn't have a hearing. It's been referred to the House Committee on Behavioral Health and Healthcare, but no, it hasn't moved. This isn't the first time this has come up. I believe this was also up in 2021, and it didn't get a hearing then either. So we'll see. I don't even know who's brought this bill up. I know who the legislator is, but not the person behind the legislator. So the other ones that don't directly affect you, but impact you in some ways, that we could get under House Bill 2696, a new board called the Sign Language Interpreter Board. It would be a 7-member board and has 6 license types and/or fields of practice. if we're sticking with that mantra. And it would also add the dental laboratory program, so it would just be under HLO, would licensed dental laboratories who do prosthetic appliances for the mouth and in relation to getting an order from a physician, so, or from a dentist. So those are kind of the three big ones. There's 2 cosmetology ones, 1 behavior analyst one, and then 1 for temporary staffing agencies that wouldn't impact you guys. Any questions about that? You can see on the page where the HB 2048 is blue. Those are links. So if you want to go and check on them periodically, you can. Or email me and I'll let you know what's going on.
Yeah, thanks. This is Ryan Opus. Thanks. I just
Thank you.
link. So now I'm hitting the one regarding tattooing. Thank you.
Perfect. You want me to do, okay. So the other one, so that's it. We have other board business. HLO has one bit of business, which is the April 3rd meeting. Based on what Matthew said, he's gonna be out. We don't have anything really up. Rules have been done. I don't anticipate us being quite ready to open up tattooing and body piercing rules because their qualification committee needs to meet first. But your next meeting would be in August. And even then, unsure if Matthew would be available, but hopefully we'd have new board members on by then. So we want to know if we can, go ahead.
This is Matthew Holmes. I should be available for the April meeting, and the August meeting I will be definitely unavailable for.
August, no, April, maybe.
April probably, almost definitely, and I can check into some stuff over the next week or 2 and make sure that I can plan around it so I don't leave you guys hanging.
The only thing we would have for that meeting at this time would be just your normal director's report, licensing and fiscal, regulatory, and then I would give you an update on the legislative stuff. So I
Okay.
don't know if you want to cancel that, have a 30-minute meeting, totally up to you guys.
This is Matthew Holmes. I'm neutral on it. I mean, I would like to have a meeting mostly just so I can, hear you guys' voices, see a couple faces.
Okay, perfect. We'll keep it on the books then. It's already on the books, so we'll do it. And then,
Perfect.
so we'll kind of play August by, we'll just kind of see where it goes, see if we have new members. I know that we have at least one person, hopefully for the public member, and we're gonna do some outreach for body piercers to see if we can get couple people on for that profession. So hopefully by August we'll have a mostly full board. So let's plan on August. We're gonna do April and we'll move forward. And that is all I have. That's all HLO has.
This is Matthew Holmes. I would actually really like to circle back around to a previous topic regarding Desta Fury's letter. In the letter, I'm probably paraphrasing here, but the individual had mentioned that there hasn't been any increase in safety given all of the rule changes in the piercing industry and that major changes need to be made. And I'm really curious whether that's an objective opinion or a subjective opinion. And I know for a fact that we have data on it. Is there any way that we can put together a little presentation of what kind of issues we were having in the piercing community before all of the law changes happened, and then compare it to current and see if that's an accurate statement? Because it doesn't feel like it is, but that is not an information-based opinion.
I can only give you my recalled opinion, same kind of yours. Body piercing has never had a large number of let's say complaints. Before they came under, the boards were meshed together, and even now. I'm just kind of checking the regulatory report. We can definitely put together a slideshow or a document that shows what the complaints have been over the years. Would that be when it was during the piercing program? And then what it is now? Is that what you mean? And kind of the safety that's changed?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if there's been as little of a change as the individual that wrote in has experienced. You know, I want to see if that's an actuality, and we maybe went a little overboard, and we can talk about fiddling around with some stuff, or if that's an inaccurate statement, and we already did the right thing.
So for standard body piercing, we have no open cases. We have 3 open cases from 2023. And then we had received 1 case in 2019 for piercing, 3 in 2021, and all those are all closed. For earlobe, we had 1 complaint in 2019 and it's closed. And we do have 1 still open. And then for specialty, we had 2 in 2019 that were closed, 2 in 2021, and it's closed. So, I mean, you don't have very many licensees, so even 10 complaints would be 10%-ish or, 5%, but you have a very low, and this has been unchanged. I think it's even lower before you guys were in just the body piercing program, if I remember correctly. But we can definitely put something together, for sure.
I'd be curious to see. I'd be really curious to see if that's something that's simple to put together. I'd like to see it.
So the only thing, and we'll have to, let me think. So here's where the information could be skewed, right? Is before it went under all the same boards, there was a large number of licensees because the requirements were very low, right? So you're gonna have hundreds of licensees before 2011, and now you have a very low number because the requirements are so much more to get a license. So that will be slightly skewed, but I think percentage-wise, it'll look the same. But we'll make sure that that's all in there. Does that make sense?
Cool.
So we'll show you licensing number, complaints. And I think I might even have something about safety and infection control that kind of compared the two. I think I might have
Awesome.
done that 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
That'd be great. That'd be super.
Okay. Anything else?
This is Matthew Holmes. I'll quit bugging you guys with stuff. I don't think I have anything else.
We'll try to get that by the April date. Sorry. I'll try to get that to the April date for the Desta Fury stuff, but I'm not guaranteeing.
Well, your efforts are appreciated greatly.
Okay. Okay, Matthew, if you want to take us out, we're all done.
All right, excellent. The Board of Electrologists and Body Arts Practitioners meeting is adjourned at 12:16 p.m. February 13th, 2023.
Thanks.